Hello, and welcome back to the NoScore Review Show. I'm your host, Nick Green, and today joining me once again is Zach Milne. Zach, welcome back to the show.
What's going on? Thank you for having me. Honored to be here once again.
Excited to have you back. Today we are reviewing The Flash, the latest movie in the DCEU, I guess.
Officially,
one of the
still,
last
yeah.
four. One of the last four, or I guess maybe not last four, last three films for this year for that universe. Since
I think we only have Blue Beetle and Aquaman left. I think.
Yeah. Well, and I was actually, before we started recording this, I was just catching up on Zach's content he was releasing in the last little bit. I was watching your Blue Beetle video. So
amazing.
I don't know if we consider that.
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I have
it's
no
all
idea.
a big mess with DC.
And if you thought you were getting answers at the end of this movie,
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah, no answers to be found there. Yeah, we are reviewing The Flash, one of 4 DC films this year. The first little bit of this review will be spoiler free, and then we'll get into our full spoiler thoughts later on. There will be an explicit warning for that, so don't worry about getting leaked any info or plot details. We'll make sure to warn you about that. But for now, we'll get into our general thoughts and our expectations going into this film. So, Zach, I haven't read or watched any of your impressions yet. I wanted to go in blind. What did you think of The Flash?
I really liked it.
Really?
I thought, okay, I will say, if we're talking about like first or like what our expectations were through the freaking roof, like they were so high for me. I was shaking with excitement this past week for this movie. I thought I was going to start phasing. It was, I mean, seriously, I was so excited for this thing. And of course you had like James Gunn, David Zaslav, the head of Warner Brothers. Tom Cruise even was like, this is like the greatest movie they've ever seen.
Tom Cruise, I haven't seen
Did you hear about that? Tom Cruise asked for a special screening of this movie like months ago, and then had to personally call Andy Muschietti, the director, because he was just so in love with it.
What the heck? Okay.
So the hype has been real. And so I was riding that hype. Keaton was coming back, all this stuff. And the movie is so bizarre. It is so wacky. But I really enjoyed my time watching it. I thought it was a ton of fun. Not a great movie necessarily, but I thought it was good. I really enjoyed it.
Interesting. That's so interesting. We're in for an interesting show then. What's your like history with like DC? Are you more of a DC fan, or are you about kind of the same as Marvel? Like what?
No, very casual that? DC. Very casual.
Very casual. Okay, interesting.
Marvel is like, I got introduced to Marvel before, well, maybe not before DC, but I latched on to Marvel more than I did DC as a kid. So Marvel's kind of been my thing more than DC. The only thing I really know of DC is like Superman and Batman, and then when the DCEU started, that was my introduction to Wonder Woman and Aquaman. And my Flash introduction was actually Grant Gustin's show on the CW. So I know a little bit more about the Flash character just from that show. Like the Speed Force and all that stuff in this movie, which if you don't know about that stuff, I don't know if this movie is gonna lose you or if you're gonna be okay with that stuff. But because I knew my knowledge of it from the TV show, I was cool with it. So that's kind of my extent of DC knowledge. I've only read 1 or 2 Batman comics, and that's about it.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I would call myself I like aggressively casual DC fan. I'm really have only ever been interested in like the Batman stuff, and like not to the DCEU's credit like for any of that, because like they haven't exactly done much to win me over in the first place for other stuff. Like I really liked the James Gunn Suicide Squad, and like the first Shazam movie I thought was really fun. But otherwise it's been kind of lackluster for the most part. I went back and watched Man of Steel over the pandemic though, and I actually really enjoyed that for the most part.
Yeah, I like that one.
But yeah, I went in pretty blind with this one. I didn't have much expectations outside of the buzz that it's been getting, and some people calling it like one of the best superhero films ever. Um, and yeah, the troubling production or development history on this film is one for the like record books, because my
Yep.
God, it's taken almost a decade for this film to come out just in the like
Yep.
DCEU version. It
They
like when you
they
go
announced
ahead.
this movie during season, I think right after the first episode of Grant Gustin's Flash premiered.
My
And now
God.
that show has ended after 9 seasons,
Yeah,
and we're now having the movie come out.
that's just mind-boggling. It's changed. Like, I have a note here in my run of show. Where is it? It's so it was initially supposed to come out in 2018, five
Yep.
years ago. It's gone through, like, if you include like everyone, like all of the directors and writers that Warner Brothers like even just approached and was like, do you want to direct this film? It's gone through 12 different directors and 7 different writers, including the ones they finally landed on for the final product. So it has changed hands like countless times.
That's wild. That
Yeah.
is
So
insane.
it's honestly, it's surprising we even got this film, especially considering all of the stuff that came out. I think it was last year about like canning Batgirl and like shelving
Mhm.
a bunch of different like Warner Brothers properties and whatnot.
I saw.
Um,
I don't know if this is a bit of a tangent or not, but I saw the funniest tweet the other day, where I still don't know where you landed on the movie yet. We're gonna get into that,
yeah, we're gonna
but
get there.
it was someone tweeted out. They said, if David Zaslav says The Flash is the greatest comic book movie ever made, then I really want to see Batgirl because this guy has terrible tastes in comic book
I saw that
movies.
tweet too. I saw that tweet too. That was so good.
It was
Yeah.
so funny.
Oh man. Yes. So like getting back on track a little bit, I'll finally release my thoughts. I wasn't a huge fan.
Hmm.
I didn't outright hate it. But I think at best it was okay for me.
Hmm.
There was a lot of like stuff muddying the waters for me in this film. Um, so it's kind of just thrown in with the pile of other DCEU films that have come out as of late. I would say I liked it more than Fury of the Gods.
Yeah, me
I
too.
thought Fury of the Gods was just aggressively like forgettable.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I think there were a few things I liked in the film, but overall it's like like I could feel its runtime a little bit. I appreciated Keaton's Batman, seeing him again. Um, and like a couple of the supporting cast were good. Like a few of the jokes landed here and there, but outside of that, it was just like very okay for me. I might watch it again eventually once I might do like a DCEU ranked video eventually or something like that. So I'll watch it again, if only just to refresh my memory on what happens in the film. But otherwise, I can't see myself like going back to it like outside of any other reason other than that. So um, yeah, not one of my favorite. It's definitely on the lower end of my 2023 ranked list. So
Interesting.
yeah, it didn't do much for me. But we'll get into the nitty gritty
Yeah.
uh, real soon. I think personally, I don't think I would recommend it. I mean, I don't
Mm.
know what kind of merit any of this is in terms of an aggressive DC fan recommending it to diehard DC fans. But like, I mean, if this has been on your watch list forever and you've been eagerly waiting for this, then I guess go check it out. But like, if you're like me and are just someone walking in with no prior knowledge, I will say we kind of touched on this earlier. Like, I didn't get too lost in terms of like the Speed Force and everything. I think
Okay.
this film actually had an advantage in a sense of like movie audiences being kind of taught more about the multiverse and those types of like concepts and whatnot with like films like Doctor Strange and Spider-Verse and just the MCU overall, and even like films like Everything Everywhere All at Once, right? It kind of had that advantage of like it didn't like need to spend too much time on that. Um, but yeah, I still don't think it's a recommendation for me if I have to do that
All
kind of
right.
binary
That's
do
fascinating.
I don't I. So yeah. um, any other quick thoughts before we jump right in, Zach?
Well, I will say that I'm very eager to get into this conversation because I honestly find it more. Not that I don't like talking about movies in general, like when we all love them, but like when we
Hmm.
have different opinions, that's when it's the most fun for me because
Totally.
I can see why someone wouldn't necessarily think this is a great movie. Like I said, I didn't even think it was a great movie, but I think it is becoming a little bit of a divisive film among
Hmm.
fans. Just in this weekend, I've been seeing on Twitter, people, it's great, it's not great, it sucks, it was okay. Like it's all over the place, and I kind of love that. I love that
Right.
about movies. Like we watched the same thing, but we came out thinking completely different, and that's so much fun to me. I do want to know how was your audience? When did you see it? At what time? And how was the theater? Was it full? Was it empty? I'm very curious.
So I was in, um, I don't know. I think I was in a VIP theater, so like
Ooh,
already
fast.
objectively kind of smaller audience right off the bat, and a different kind of audience, right? Like you're not like getting families or kids or anything. Um, but like I think comparing my opening night experiences for like big blockbuster films, I think they've been pretty on par with each other in terms of like audience engagement. I don't think the VIP necessarily detracted from past experiences. With The Flash in particular, I saw it the Friday, so I technically saw it on like wide release opening
Yeah.
night because I don't think it shows on Thursdays everywhere still. But I wasn't with like the diehard, like very first showtime available type of crowd that I have been with like the MCU films, for example. Um, it was relatively quiet, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
It got a few laughs here and there, but I would say it was pretty mild overall. It wasn't one of the most energetic crowds I've been with. So yeah, when did you go?
I went last night. I went Friday
Okay.
night for the. I don't know
Yeah,
when this
yeah.
is gonna air.
Right.
It was Friday night at 6:30 in the big theater. In my city, like the screening was in the biggest theater in the theater, and so technically that was the first showing of the night that it opened. Not even half full, and like not even close
No
to half full.
way.
Yeah, it was.
Really?
I walked in there and I was like, oh, yikes. Um,
Wow.
because I've been saying for a little bit, I'm like, yeah, Shazam didn't do too well, and Black Adam didn't do that well, but I think the Flash is gonna make a lot of money. No, I don't know if I
Yeah.
feel that anymore.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, but I was providing the film's laugh track almost single handedly.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I could hear my voice and no one else's. So
That's so funny.
we'll see. We'll see
Wow.
how that was with the
That
humor
was
wise for us.
that was kind of like in a sense how I initially thought my experience with Mario was going to go. I don't think I showed up that early. Like I think we maybe showed up like 10, 15 minutes early to the like actual showtime. And when we got in there, it was like there were like five other people in there. So I was like initially really freaking worried. I'm like, whoa, this, and it was like a 7 p.m. like Friday night showing. It was so weird. But I mean, after a while, it was one of those crowds where it was like, I think everyone showed up at the very last minute. So like the theater was packed by the time the trailers had started going and everything. So, but that's very funny. All right. I think with that, let's finally get into our highlights and lowlights. So, this is your official spoiler warning for The Flash. If you don't want to know any plot details or any details at all for that matter, then check out now, pause the video, go see it, and then come back and join our deep dive. All right, Zach, what highlights and lowlights do you have for this film?
Honestly, highlight Ezra Miller.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I
All right.
honestly I was surprised as much as you guys were to hear that. Because I went in for Keaton. That was like
Right.
the
Yeah.
big excitement point for me. Like Michael Keaton's not my favorite Batman, but I
Hmm.
grew up with 89 in Returns to some extent. I'm not a big fan
Sure.
of Returns, but I was familiar with him, and I was excited to see him back on the screen and what they were going to do with him and how they're going to incorporate him into the story. And I thought he did a good job. I honestly didn't think that, besides some cool action sequences, the movie gave him that much to do. That was a little
Yeah.
bit disappointing for me, and he comes in really late into the film too. Like he's like the middle
Yeah.
of the
Surprisingly
second
late.
act.
Yeah.
Not as late as Supergirl though. That was really surprising. But
Yeah, that's true.
so basically, Ezra Miller carries 85% of this movie.
Yeah, he is very much a lead.
And when it started, and he was giving, I mean, like the socially awkward performance that he was given in Justice League, I was like, oh man, I wasn't a big fan of this in Justice League. I don't know if this is gonna be for the rest of the movie, if I'm gonna enjoy this. And then when they get paired up with their past selves, and it's like he almost like calms down a bit more, or like because he's in the presence of himself, he's more comfortable. Barry's more comfortable. I
Right.
felt his performance kind of changed a bit, and then I started to appreciate the many different performances that he was doing, because he has to carry it comedically with his past self. And I thought like everything with his past self I really enjoyed. He has to have chemistry by himself with himself, and I thought
Right.
he sold it on both ends. And I know there's a body double and stuff that he's working against, but still, he has to work essentially against himself. And dramatically, I thought he had a lot of dramatic, emotional, weighty moments that he had to carry in this film as well. And I thought they did a great job at that too. So with everything that the performance demanded, I honestly was pretty impressed. I thought they did a great job.
Okay. Yeah, I was not as sold on their performance. Also, just to acknowledge, I believe Ezra goes by they them. I don't know if they
Mm.
identify as non-binary or not, but I know they're like what's the word? Their pronouns are they
Mm.
them. I have already messed up on that, so I just want to acknowledge that right off the bat. I'll probably mess up in the future, but
Yeah.
feel free to correct me um, still. But yeah, just wanted to mention that. Also, while I'm mentioning things, uh, you can make up your own mind as you whether you want to separate art and artists, right? The whole talk around Ezra's
Yeah.
like charges and everything um, certainly aren't the best thing DC and Warner Brothers want to have circling the film. And I mean,
No.
that actually kind of plays into their favor with how much they're marketing Michael Keaton in the advertising.
Yeah.
So there's something more than just Ezra Miller in the film. So yeah, I hope like reparations are paid
Mm.
where they should be.
But
I hope
but for those
Ezra's
that like,
journey is like true and he
Mhm.
like and they want to honestly like uh heal and like learn from those mistakes. Sorry, Zach, I kind
Yeah,
of
sorry,
cut you off there.
I thought there was a pause there, but no, like I think it is important for those who do want to make up their mind about Ezra and how much they want to see Ezra. I think it's important. Like, if you are excited for Keaton, if you are excited for Supergirl, they're there, but Ezra is central,
Yeah,
and you
it
will
is
mostly
Barry's
just be
film
watching
for sure.
Ezra.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, make yeah, like you can make that decision yourself. Getting back to the actual performance of the movie though, uh I wasn't as sold. I found it a little bit more forced. I think for the most part they did do a pretty solid job of playing like off like themselves, right? Like having two of the same character effectively. And I actually do think they wrote them different enough where you kind of
Hmm.
had one being more of the comedic relief and one being the more seasoned serious uh type, and that dichotomy worked at points for me as well, but overall it still felt pretty forced. The whole like I think they played too much into that like quirky, socially awkward uh side of like Barry for me, like especially in the first act. A lot of it like was really felt very stunted and very like artificial for me. I think some of the emotional beats worked for me, like the last act with his mom. I think was fairly decent, but yeah, not one of the selling points for me necessarily. He doesn't like ruin the film by any means, but yeah, I would have to relatively disagree with you there, Zach.
All right, fair enough.
Um,
See, that's crazy because I was impressed the whole time. Like like I said, I went in for Keaton, and it takes a long time for Keaton to get there, and
totally.
I could have easily been like, oh man, this performance sucks, and it's not what I
Hmm.
came here for. But won me over. That's all I can say is
Hmm.
Ezra won me over.
Fair enough. I think also, I don't know what your full history was with the DCEU proper. Like, have you seen all of the
Yep,
films?
all of them.
Okay, up to date. Okay, okay. I haven't actually seen either of the Justice Leagues, and I think I
Really?
saw Batman v Superman once. So I'm pretty like out of the loop with that universe for the most part. I think I've watched the majority of them, but arguably probably not some of the more major contenders. So yeah, this was kind of my first proper introduction to Barry, I would say. So maybe that is
Mm.
one of the weaknesses potentially of the film is it is carrying over some of that not goodwill, but just like it's a continuation of that character that I hadn't been introduced to yet,
I
maybe.
could see that because the beginning of this film actually connected more to Zack Snyder's Justice League than I thought it would, and
It
that I was
I would
anticipating that.
say one of the highlights is not to cut you off,
No
Zach, but
worries.
like it felt very lived in that
Yep.
first sequence with talking with Batman and Wonder Woman showing up and everything. It felt very authentic and real and lived in for
Mhm.
that universe, which is really great, I thought.
Yeah.
Um, but
And I
yeah.
got a strong sense or, like, the same similar kind of thing with, Iron Man and Spider-Man with, Barry
Yeah, yeah.
and Bruce, because in Justice League, in both versions, uh, Bruce is the one that recruits Barry.
Mhm.
And so at the beginning of this one, where it was like Barry's trying to prove himself, he's sick of being like getting the small jobs of the Justice League. Like he wants to advance up, he wants to be more.
Mhm.
And the mentorship he was having with Bruce, I thought was very similar to Spider-Man and Iron Man, and I thought it was really cool that they continued on in that way. And there's also one of the big connections that it had to Zack Snyder's Justice League is when Barry is talking to Bruce about going back in time, and Bruce says, I can't remember what the
Oh.
place is, but he says, like you did in this
Oh, yeah,
place.
yeah.
And he goes, oh, that was only for a second. This was like a whole day. That
Mm.
happened in Zack Snyder's Justice League cut, not in the theatrical
Okay.
Justice League. So for
Interesting.
those who don't like the Justice League, as people call it, they
Right.
don't they totally bypass that. They just connect to Zack Snyder's Justice League, which I think a lot of people are gonna be
Interesting.
happy about.
Cool. All right. Interesting, yeah. Um, yeah, so that first sequence, just kind of playing off that as well. This will play into overall, for the film, but one of my lowlights, probably the biggest lowlight for me, the CGI was bad in
Yeah,
this film. It was
yeah.
so bad. I'm not usually one to even really harp on CGI, much less like notice bad CGI. I feel like I'm probably in the minority most of the time when it's like even in trailers, people will be like, "Oh, the CG in that scene sucks ass," and then I'm just on this side being like, "I didn't really pay attention to that most of the time," but it feels like you're watching like a Robert Zemeckis film from like the late 2000s. Um,
Oh yeah, that's a good
it
one.
it got to the point where like especially in like the Speed Force scenes, it was
Hmm.
like I was questioning, is it just supposed to look like this, or like were they wanting to go for photorealism and they just didn't like have the time or like resources?
The
um
director, Andy Muschietti, did come out and say that the effects are intentional, and he was trying to go for like when Barry's going really fast and he's in the Speed Force, he's seeing things warped and differently than
right,
reality.
okay.
And what I said in my review was, "That's great, Andy. If it was intentional, that doesn't mean it looks good.
That's
Like you can do it
that's
on purpose.
totally fair point.
I can shoot the rest of the thing like this."
Yeah.
purposely, that
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
mean
yeah.
it looks good. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a great point, Zach. Yeah, that was rough. But like that first sequence, the baby sequence was felt so weird to me just in principle from the first thing. But then the like not good CGI really made it like hard to watch. The whole comedy of it all just didn't land for me. So I was just like very uncomfortable the entire sequence. Like I see what they were kind of going for, but it just felt so weird for
yeah.
me.
That's where I come
Um,
in and say like this movie's just so bizarre. Because when that
yeah,
happened, I was like, "What are they doing right
what
now?"
are
Like,
they doing? Yeah.
for those that have trouble separating the artist from the artist, kind of thing. Like,
Oh, that too.
Ezra puts
Yeah.
babies in microwaves,
Yeah.
and
Just so terrible. He also like has a line later in the film where he's like, "I could drug you." It's
yes,
like,
and
dude, bad timing.
And
Holy crap.
there's a scene where Iris West comes over and he doesn't have anything in the fridge, so he phases through the wall to his neighbor and grabs 2 beers. And I turned to my
Yeah.
brother I was watching with, and I was like, "That's the second time Ezra has broken and entered and stolen beer."
Oh no. Oh no. Oh my god. Yeah, that's terrible timing.
Yeah,
What
some
else in
very
that?
funny moments like that.
Yeah. The barista part was just I did not care for that whole barista
Yeah.
segment. But yeah, moving on, maybe another highlight. I really appreciated the like lived in feel of that universe with Batman and Wonder Woman showing up, and I think their interactions felt pretty authentic, even not having seen like Justice League and stuff. So I was pretty sold on that
Yeah.
end of it. Ben Affleck was great for the limited time he showed up. I thought he
Mhm.
was cool. Um, he got a little bit to do action wise and like character wise too, with that later scene where he's talking to Barry about the Speed Force and everything. Um, yeah, do you want to throw in another highlight there,
I
Zach?
will say, not so much a highlight, but and not really a low light either. But man, DC or Warner Brothers, they're pushing that Wonder Woman thing. Like every time, like she shows up, like
Yeah,
every time, like she shows up
two
everywhere. Like
films, two
it's
of two so
yes, it's
far
not
in
even
this year.
exciting anymore. She's
No,
everywhere. It's like Shazam: Fury of the Gods. She showed up for no reason at the end of that one. It was so stupid. And then with
it was quite literally a Deus Ex Machina in that
yes,
film. The
it
gods show
was.
up and fix
Oh,
everything. It's
it
like, what?
bothered me so much at the end of that film. But like this one, I felt kind of just sad because she shows up and you could tell like she's like, "Hey boys," and then she holds and the music plays and you
Right.
can tell the filmmakers are like, "This is where they applaud because they love Wonder Woman." My
Yeah,
theater
yeah.
was dead silent.
Hmm.
Like no applause, no nothing. It was just awkward silence for a little bit as she pulled them up, and you know that that's what they wanted their big cheer moment to be. And
Yeah.
it kind of plays into how these DC films they did not connect with the audience, and I think
Hmm.
that was a moment for me where I was like, oh yeah, like it's realized like the audience is not into this like they are with the Avengers or stuff like that. Like they don't care
Yeah.
that Wonder Woman's here at all.
They're trying to do those shortcuts and be like, we want to do what Marvel's doing, but they're not. Like, it just feels so inauthentic in those films. Yeah, the that part I did appreciate the lived in feel of it, but yeah, it still had some of that like artificial vibe a little bit.
Mm,
Getting to, I think this is kind of another overall thing, but it was particularly noticeable within the first half of the movie, I would say, Act One, part of Act Two, a little bit. The pacing felt a little bit off for me. Like it felt really disjointed of like, okay, things are like slow a little bit. We're getting reintroduced to this world. We're getting introduced to Barry again. And then he like after that whole ordeal wraps up, then he like has an emotional breakdown and time travels like in a split second. And then he
yeah,
like comes back and talks to Bruce about it. And then he like that whole segment felt very condensed when it shouldn't have been. It felt like we could have explored that a little bit more. But they like speed through that so fast, no pun intended, just to get to the like that one, like the 2013 timeline or whatever it is, when they
yeah.
needed to get there. Um, So the pacing felt a little bit disjointed for me in parts, because like you'll have these big segments where it's like just Barry, and then we have to like rush through a bunch of exposition and plot stuff, and then you get to the next like meat and potatoes part
Yeah.
where like Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne shows up, and then it slows down a lot again. So that wasn't one of my favorite things either. I mentioned earlier I did kind of feel the 2.5 hour runtime with this one. uh, it wasn't like snail's pace. It just was noticeable, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I would
What
say that
else?
it was noticeable, but I was still having fun, so I didn't mind it.
Sure.
Like I could feel when it was like, wow, I wonder if we're 2 hours in or not yet.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't really care because I'm having fun with this movie.
Right.
I can see your point with it being so condensed at the beginning and going back in time and stuff like that. Because I do think, like I said, Ezra really did a great job with the emotional beats that Ezra had to hit with this
Hmm.
movie, and I thought that Ezra's performance was great. I didn't feel the emotions myself necessarily because the mother character, I've never seen the mother. You know, like I don't
Yeah.
know who this
Yeah.
is. Like there
Yeah.
is this kind of like what if in your head where it's like if we had gone on this journey with this Flash and we had like an origin story movie where the mom dies, and then this is if like Flashpoint was like the end of a trilogy, and then it
Sure.
was like
Totally.
those emotions would be there because we would have had
Yeah.
the connection where there's no real connection with this story for us at least. And yeah, it's all done in like flashbacks kind of quickly
Yeah.
and
It
so the
almost feels like they tried to shoehorn a bit of an origin story in with this film at some points, where like with the
mhm,
flashbacks of the like tragedy with the mom happening, and then even with like younger Barry getting introduced to his powers, right? Like
yeah.
that feels very origin story-esque.
Yeah,
Um
which I thought
so
was very clever in some ways too.
yep.
Because I
Yeah.
also liked Barry has to mentor younger Barry,
Yeah, yeah.
and
I
there's that's a large chunk of the second act, and I actually found a lot of those like segments really enjoyable. Like we find
mhm.
out how he gets the name the Flash. You know what I mean?
I don't remember that part actually.
Let's just say there's a lot of Ezra in this
Oh,
movie.
right. Yeah, yeah,
A
yeah. Now I
lot of
remember what you're talking about.
you go and see everything.
Yeah. Yes, I recall that now.
Yeah, he runs really fast and ends up naked in the streets. And then he's like naked in his apartment and he phases through the floor and ends up naked in
Yeah,
another person's apartment. Like he flashes a lot of people. Let's just say
he
that. The
sure
Flash
he
flashes
sure
a lot of
does.
people in this movie.
Oh, also kind of poorly timed too, with all the like allegations and whatnot. Yikes.
Yeah, yeah.
I I did appreciate that, the younger Barry being taught by older Barry, which also I think he demonstrated those two different versions of Barry pretty well for the most part. I also didn't actually expect like older Barry to lose his powers in this film. I didn't realize that was going to happen.
Yeah,
I
that was
thought we were
interesting.
just yeah. I actually, one of the few like comedic bits that worked for me was when he was in the like city center or whatever and he tries running and he's just going
Yes.
in circles.
And
That
that
was
was
pretty
great
good.
too because it was a very self-aware moment for the movie and for the DCEU because one of the
Yeah.
huge criticisms has been how he runs, how
Yeah.
Barry runs.
Right.
And I think I can't remember, I think it was Zack Snyder or someone said like, "Well, you don't know how fast someone or like what they look like when they're running that fast." So when he was just
Right.
running normally and it
Yeah.
looked the exact same way, one of the
Yeah.
biggest laughs I got in the theater. I thought that was hilarious.
Right. Um yeah, so moving along, I guess we'll just kind of keep going relatively sequentially. I guess moving on to Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, this
I
is when Keaton
think
comes in.
that introduction was done pretty well. I mean, it does rely a little bit heavily on like nostalgia.
Yeah.
You get like the Danny Elfman theme, and like the set design was very well done, and it evokes that kind of like eerie Tim Burton aesthetic a little bit, which is
Yeah.
really cool.
I thought his introduction, like the first time we see him, was incredibly weird I didn't
It
fully
was
understand
weird.
what was happening. He was hiding in a cupboard and he had like long hermit hair and a long
Yeah,
beard and he like just jumps out and attacks them. But then
yeah,
he's completely normal after that one
yeah,
scene. And I was
yeah,
like, what has been happening? What's going
yeah.
on?
Yeah, it's like they wanted to have this like really cool fight sequence between them to show his like abilities and whatnot, but they couldn't just have him like hanging around in the bat suit, right?
Yeah, it was weird. It was like they wanted to this again, the movie's so bizarre. It was like they wanted to do this like Luke Skywalker unconventional thing where Michael Keaton's Batman has become a hermit. He's hiding out and like
Sure.
he was wearing flip-flops and he looked like he
Yeah.
was like a bad guy
One
dressed
flip
on
flop.
vacation. Yeah, one flip-flop because he threw the other one. And he
Yeah.
looked like a poorly dressed man on vacation and it was
Yeah.
like it gave you
He
this
looked like the
idea.
dude.
Yeah, he looked like this like, exactly. It looked like he let himself go and he was just like this crazy guy now. But like
Yeah.
after that one introduction scene, he was exactly the
Then
Bruce
he's
Wayne you remember from
explaining how the
89.
multiverse works.
Yeah, so like the visual did not fit the
Yeah.
characterization. And I thought
Yeah.
that was very strange. It was a very
Yeah, it was
strange
a very
decision.
odd choice. Once we finally get to like the Bruce Wayne Batman proper, like we get the suit and everything in the Batcave, then it's like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
this is kind of what I remember and what I love about the character. Yeah, that whole intro was a very interesting choice. Um, but yeah, the Batcave looked really cool.
It did. It looked just like
I
89.
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't drive the Batmobile though. I was a little disappointed with that.
Yeah,
He
that
never
was
got in the
interesting.
Batmobile.
We got the bat. What is it? The Bat Wing?
Yeah.
His plane? Yeah. Um, Another one of my favorite. Like, I don't think it actually was necessarily supposed to be played up for comedy, but it got the biggest laugh out of me. Is when it's later in the film and they're doing like a maneuver escaping the Kryptonian ships, and Bruce is doing the like spinning with his plane,
Yes.
but his cockpit stays like upright, but the passengers don't. They just spin with
Right.
the
And
rest of the
it's spinning in
plane.
the
I thought that
background.
was so hilarious. Like he designs it so that like he doesn't give a shit about the passengers in the
Yes.
plane, but as long as he's upright, it's all that matters.
Yeah, that
So
was
funny to
great.
me. His I think his like motivation for joining them worked relatively well. I liked the little line, like it was almost kind of an exact mirror to Ben Affleck's Batman in the film. He gets
Mhm.
like a little emotional beat to like talk about how like the tragedy made him who he is, almost to a fault a little bit, right?
Yeah. That was a
Um,
nice scene. That was a really nice scene.
yeah, I agree. Um, and then they go off to save who they think is Kal-El
Right.
um,
Because Barry's
in
looking
Russia.
for because Barry's looking for Clark Kent because Zod has
Yes.
arrived in this timeline. So
Yes.
this isn't Burton's timeline, right? This is a completely
No,
new thing
this is
created,
where the
but
film also
Keaton,
gets weird.
yeah,
It
because it's
like
Keaton,
it's
but it's not
the
Burton.
it's Keaton's or Burton's Batman in Man of Steel's like the DCEU. And I don't know, it's very
Yeah, it's very
weird. Well, I mean,
confusing.
it's kind of touched on in the spaghetti scene where it's like you
Yeah,
change the past and the future. So, yeah, I don't know.
but
That's
there's
their
points
way
that
of
can't be
explaining why
changed.
they
Like
have
there's
Keaton's Batman.
yeah, like there's fixation points that won't change in any
Yeah.
timeline or branch and multiverse and all that stuff. I was just a little bit confused by that. I was like, okay, so it's Keaton, it's Burton's Batman, but this is not Burton's world. And it was
Yeah.
just kind of I don't know. And they meshed it with Man of Steel and the DCEU, and it was just kind of trippy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it feels like, and I can only imagine what nightmare behind the scenes had gone into making this
Yeah.
film when it is. But like it's like they wanted to have a legacy Batman, but not but then the like afterthought of like actually explaining how he got there was that an afterthought. So that was just their kind of half-assed way of explaining away bringing in Keaton's Batman to this universe, maybe.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess
I don't
so.
know. Not the strongest multiverse logic
Not
of some of the
really.
more recent films. It's also hilarious to me. This comes out like a week after Across the Spider-Verse, where like, oh, it was so well done
So
and
much
so
better.
good.
Yeah.
So like, yeah. But yeah, now Zod is showing up and they have to go find uh Clark, because we get that flashback of Barry having been there apparently at the tragedy of, is it Metropolis that gets destroyed in Man of
Yeah,
Steel?
that
Yeah.
was kind of cool, but I was kind of, well, I don't know. I felt like it didn't have a payoff. It felt like they were going to set up a payoff because he tells this story about how he tried to help out, and there was a kid and
Yeah.
a father, and he saved the kid, but he couldn't save the father, and the
Right.
father died. And then at the end of the film, they show that exact father and son duo again during
Hmm.
the attack from Zod, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, perfect, two berries now. So one can
Right.
save the kid, one can save the father. They don't save
Nope.
either.
Nope.
They don't do
Well, they have to
anything
fight
with it.
Zod.
Even though they present it as like this big traumatic moment in
Yeah.
Barry's uprising to being a hero. It's like I
Hmm.
failed at this one thing and I've always wanted to fix it, and then they just drop it. They drop a
Yeah.
lot of things that they kind
They
of
do.
establish in
Yeah.
this movie.
I mean, like, you could almost argue that like they're trying to just do preventative measures instead, and just like nip Zod in the bud before he even gets the chance to like lay waste to other cities and whatnot.
Yeah,
But I don't know. It's a bit of a mental gymnastic, if you ask
yeah.
me. Um,
But this is when we
so
get to
yeah,
Supergirl.
that's when we get to Supergirl. One of my highlights for this film, Sasha Cal, I think, Sasha Cal.
I
Um,
Calais, I think. I don't know.
Calais. Oh God. Okay.
I
One
think
of
it's
those.
Calais. I don't know.
She was fantastic. She maybe has 20 lines in the film,
15 minutes
but
of screen time. Yeah.
yeah. But what she does with those 15 minutes, my goodness,
Hmm.
like she brought it. Like, and I thought she was like a ferocious Supergirl, which was a such a refreshing take from the like passive Clark Kent, right? It
Yeah.
like when she like starts laying into Zod when she finds out Clark was killed, then I was like, oh
Yeah.
damn, okay, here we go. That was
Yeah.
really cool. I really
Th-
appreciated that
This
part.
movie is very unapologetically dismissive of Henry Cavill's Superman, which like I don't think is necessarily the movie's intention or fault. It's just kind of
Right.
funny that it comes out after Henry Cavill's been unceremoniously dismissed from DC,
Yeah.
and you don't get to see him, but you see Batman and Wonder Woman and Flash
Yeah.
and even Aquaman comes into this. Jason Momoa has like a stupid post credit scene at the end, but
Oh, he what? Okay,
did you stay for
I
the
didn't
post
actually
credit
stick
scenes?
around. No, I was
No?
like, I'm
Yeah.
done. I don't
It
need
was
to.
literally it was just Barry and Aquaman getting drunk. And then Aquaman falls
Oh,
in a puddle and you
okay.
know, you think he's drowning, but he's able to breathe, so it's fine. That was
Okay.
the punchline.
Interesting.
So,
Alrighty.
but yeah, no,
Okay, yeah.
Henry Cavill gets blown up as an infant in this movie,
He
so
does.
he ain't
He
here.
gets harvested meaninglessly because it ends up that Supergirl has the key to
Yep.
Krypton or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Which
sorry,
speaking
go
of
ahead, Zach.
Supergirl, I agree. I thought she was really, really good with the action sequences, and what she had to do, she did a really great job with. The actress did a great job.
Mhm.
Um, they didn't give her much to do.
No. No, no, no.
She was not a, for as heavy as she was in the marketing, she was not a huge character in this.
No.
She just kind of fell in the back of my mind, to be honest. She didn't really stand out to me.
She almost, like, if it wasn't for her performance, I would say, I feel like she would have ended up being reduced to like a MacGuffin almost. Like they need to go get something to defeat
Yeah,
uh
that's
General
a good
Zod,
point.
right? So luckily Sasha Calais brought it. Because that would have it would have been a little underwhelming otherwise.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that the whole prison break sequence was pretty cool. Uh, again, like some of the comedic stuff, like that the shovel falling and alerting all the guards, like really, like
Okay,
he's the Flash, like he.
there are several moments in this movie that bothered me with the speed. because there are
Right.
so many times where they could have used it and they don't, and there's times when they do use it, but it feels almost inconsistent with how it's used. Like he can
Right.
do all these thousands things in a second, but then there's
Yeah.
times where he can't even do one thing in a
Yeah.
in
And it's
time.
played up for like comedic effect sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like yeah, he when he's noticing the shovel fall, he could have easily like
Like it went for
it should have
so
stopped.
long. It's like, dude, just like you don't even need the speed, like
Yeah,
force or whatever to grab it.
just
Like,
stick your
oh
hand
man.
out.
Yeah, literally. And there's
It was
two of you.
ridiculous. Yeah,
Like
there's two
one of
of
you
you
could have grabbed
exactly.
it.
Yeah, that was
Um
pretty ridiculous.
yeah. The other that actually just reminded me, very weird choice when they first do phasing. Like he just does it in the apartment, but then when he does it with Barry, then we get that like hyper zoom in of the molecules passing through. It's like, don't you
Right.
think you would have rather like swapped that so that
Yeah.
like we know what's happening first?
It
It's
was a
a very
really cool
odd.
shot, but I can see what you mean. Kind of
Yeah,
in
like
the
it
wrong
was really
place.
cool, but yeah, it just very odd choice. I don't know. But yeah, getting back to what's her like Kryptonian name?
Uh
Cora something?
Carell, I think something like that. Carell or something like that.
Yeah,
Kara, I don't know. Is
Kara
Kara her Earth
Zor-El.
name or her? Yeah,
Oh man, where is it? Her
I
her
honestly don't
IMDb
remember.
credit is just Supergirl, so
Right.
that's not super
I
helpful.
honestly don't remember.
Supergirl. Getting back to Supergirl, she was great. I loved the suit design.
Mhm.
I love like the way she looked. And yeah, her ferocity was a really refreshing take. I think she's supposed to be, or at least in some comic iterations, I feel like I've heard Supergirl is supposed to be a little less like by the book compared to Clark. So it was really cool getting like a bite size of that. The desert fight was okay. I
Yeah.
actually, so one of my highlights for the film is I did appreciate, kind of talking about the phasing stuff. I did really appreciate us getting to see a variety of the Flash's powers being
Mhm.
demonstrated and demonstrated well. Like he does that like speed cyclone in the fight.
That was
He
cool.
does the zappy fingers was really cool. And I loved that like he shows that he has to like charge up to make it even more powerful. He like runs really far away and then comes back. Um, I think that was a really well done demonstration. But yeah, the fight was okay. I didn't
Anticlimactic.
expect. Sorry.
I found it was anticlimactic.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I thought the deaths of the characters took me by like they took me aback a little bit. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't realize we were going to go here. I guess that kind of leans you into maybe the climax is more supposed to be within the Speed Force once Barry and Barry are kind of going butting heads a little bit more. Um, but yeah, the Speed Force, man. Like I appreciate the design choice. I did like the concept of it. I would love to look at some concept art of it. I don't actually want to see it in the film
Yeah.
because
It
it looks
just
so bad.
it looks ugly.
It really looks ugly.
It does not look nice. It's
And
not pleasant.
then yeah, yeah, that and then they like wrap up that like revelation of just having to embrace the like fate of their mom together, and then the dark speedster or whatever his name is comes in and disrupts the whole
Yeah.
sequence, right?
Well,
That was
that's past Barry who
right. Yeah,
keeps trying to save Supergirl because that's his big thing is Supergirl gets killed and
yeah,
Zod wins and he's
yeah.
trying to prevent that and then our current Barry is like that's a fixation point you can't change it but
Hmm.
as he keeps trying he gets pieces of debris and metal and stuff in
Hmm.
him and then he's like I don't know, been doing that for 30 years or something, and now
Yeah.
he's this old guy, and he's still in there, and this is where the movie got really convoluted, I think, for its own good,
Hmm.
because Barry is trying to. to go back in time in the beginning, and this figure just kind of pushes him out, and then we never
Mhm.
see that figure again.
Yeah, we don't see him for like another hour and a half.
Yeah, and then he comes back at the end, and it's this big reveal that it's past Barry, but
Yeah.
he's trying to kill himself, the current Barry, because the current Barry wants to stop them from saving their mom, but he also pushed current Barry to save the mom. I was very confused at this point. I didn't
Yeah,
understand
he had to
motivations or what was
push
going on.
yeah, he had to push current Barry out so that he would be created. But then I think once he found out that current Barry wanted to let his mom die, then that's when he was like, okay, then you got to go if you're not going to help try and fix this. But then uh, he like collapses in on himself because he kills like past Barry when past Barry like saves current Barry.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. That's the thing about Paradox, is that if he knew that pushing Barry out meant that Barry was gonna still try to kill the mom, and that created him, then why would he push
Right.
Barry? I don't know. This is where, like I said, like the convolution of the story gets a little bit
Yeah.
um overly done in the third
Yeah.
act, and I thought the third act was definitely the weakest part of the movie for me.
Yeah.
Um, and the
I think where
cameos,
it was stronger, yeah, let's do that first actually. The
yeah,
cameos were so unnecessary, but they were
so
also super bogged down by just the CGI. Like it was
yeah,
just like they show Nicolas Cage's Superman, but I'm like, I'm not like I've seen fan art on Instagram better
yeah,
than this. Like I don't this isn't anything to me. It was a long sequence too. Like we saw him fight a space spider or something like
yeah.
out of nowhere. It was
Well,
so
that
weird.
goes into expectations, I guess, too, because people raving about the movie also said like it's this love letter to DC, all the
Right.
cameos, all this stuff, and I was like watching the movie, and I was like, okay, not really anything happening for cameo wise at the moment,
Yeah.
and then it's not till this last third act where it's like, okay, there's that like 50s Superman black and white. I saw him.
Oh
Nicolas
yeah.
Cage, which is like the deepest cut you could do because it's from a canceled movie that you have to be like
Yeah.
a hardcore nerd to even understand
Yeah.
why that's there. And then they do Christopher Reeves, and I can't remember what the Supergirl's name is from like the
Yeah.
80s, but she's there with Christopher Reeves, and that's it. I think that's
And
all I
then
really
Adam
saw.
West's Batman is also there for a split second.
Oh, I didn't see him.
Um, and apparently, like Jack Nicholson and the guy who plays Joker in the Adam West series as well shows up at some point. It's listed in the Wikipedia page at
Okay,
least,
yeah, because
so I didn't catch those. But
all these worlds are
yeah,
starting to collapse and
yeah,
collide,
they're
and
showing the multiverse collapse, but like, yeah, I don't know. It was very like it was very hollow fan service for me.
yeah, yeah, I
Um,
agree. It's like
so
with the Cross the Spider Verse, just briefly, their cameos enhanced the story and made sense for the
right,
storytelling. These cameos took away, and these cameos were just kind of they halted the movie to a stop to look at
yeah,
things that you might recognize, but it didn't feel that like first of all, you have Christopher Reeves who's gone, so we know that's not actually him,
yeah,
and no one
exactly,
even saw Nicolas Cage as Superman. So that's
yeah.
just the cool thing about that, is that it's Nicolas Cage. But unless you're a big
I
Nicolas
think the
Cage
closest
fan, you
thing
don't
we
really care.
saw was a costume test of like behind the scenes photos because I
Yes,
think there is one photo of him actually wearing the suit or
there
pieces of the
is. Yep,
suit.
I've seen
So
that.
yeah, that's the closest thing they got to work with.
It's just, yeah,
Um,
it was just weird cameos. Like you could have
yeah,
done so many more interesting ones, I guess.
well, and
But
especially because like I feel like we both know the history of all these things. Like we're aware of Christopher Reeves, we know about Nicolas Cage almost playing Superman and whatnot. But like if you know next to nothing about that and you're going in blind, it's like the film just like halts for
yeah,
like 3 minutes, and it's like, okay, what's happening here, right?
yeah,
Um, and even like going to the more major players of Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck, like they don't ultimately like Michael Keaton helps more so, I would say. Like Ben Affleck really is just there to be like a you shouldn't do this, and then Barry does it anyway. Like kicking off point almost. We get a little bit of their dynamic in the like beginning of the film, but yeah, it's like it doesn't live anywhere near up to the heights we've reached with things like the Spider-Verse films and No Way Home in particular as well.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it was just very distracting. I think it's stronger when it just focuses on Barry and Barry's story,
Yep.
like the emotional beat in the grocery store at the very end. I think was pretty well done. I think one of my gripes with the overall film, this kind of played into it a little bit in this scene in particular as well, is just the dialogue. I think Ezra Miller like brought it most of the time, but like I think the dialogue is what kind of put me off most of the time. Um
Yeah.
so but I think emotionally I think he brought it as much as they could.
Yeah. There
But
was there was something like there was one moment that I thought was really kind of weird delivery wise from Ezra, because the whole reason he goes back in time is to save his mom. The way that he figures to do that is his dad went out to get an extra can of soup.
yes.
And when he was gone, the mom died. Which, by the way, we never know how the mom dies. Maybe
Yeah.
they were setting it up
Yeah.
for a sequel or not, but that's one of the things that I was like, kind of feels dropped. Um,
Right.
but anyways, while his dad's gone, she dies. So Barry's great idea is to make sure she doesn't forget the can of soup.
Right.
So he like super speeds his way to the grocery store and he like grabs a can of soup, and as he's putting it in the basket, there's this weird moment where Ezra's like, "Don't forget the
Yeah.
soup," and I
yeah.
was like, "Are you drunk? What are you
Yeah.
doing? This is it was so
Yeah.
weird."
Yeah, that was a very weird line. I agree. Um just like some of the other like I went back and like tried to find clips because I needed to remember this verbatim. um where is it? Like the her line in the kitchen of like, not every problem has a solution, sometimes you just have to let go. It's like, that's a bit on the nose, don't you think? And
It's
like
weird that she
she's
said that
talking
when
about
he's
a
doing a
math
math
problem.
question.
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah, it's like
"Your homework, it doesn't matter. Not everything has a solution. Just forget about it."
yeah, yeah. But then, like, even more so for me, the scene where Barry and Iris are in his apartment, and they're like, um, she's saying something along the lines of like, it feels like you lost two parents, and he says, yeah, I lost my mom to a tragedy and my dad to the failures of the justice system, like verbatim. And then she's
Right.
like, is that why you got into criminal forensics, to fix the system? It's like, do people really talk like that? I don't know that they do.
I don't know. She's a
um
reporter. I kind of bought into it. It felt like
sure.
that's how she would talk to him if she was trying to get a scoop. So
Right.
I that didn't bother me very much at all.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, a lot of the dialogue. Also, I didn't write this one down, but the you want to get nuts thing they play in the trailer.
Yeah.
I thought, in context of the film, I thought that was even weirder that he says it there, because like Barry's like, we're kind of kind of have a Justice League now. Do you want to join us? And he's like, you want to get nuts? Let's get
Yeah.
nuts. It's like, would he say that there? I don't think he
I
would.
thought it would. I was waiting for the smash cut of Barry with a pack of peanuts or something in the back of the wing jet. I was like, that's how they're gonna make this work, but they didn't do
Right.
that. I was like, okay, that's a
Yeah.
weird way to respond to someone's question, but I'm gonna start using
Yeah.
that.
It's
So
like it's shoehorning in more of that like nostalgia and stuff.
yeah,
Um Even the like, you are Batman thing was weird for me, because like he already kind of discovers that he's Batman in the kitchen. I don't know. Felt very weird for me.
yeah. I'm not
Um
gonna debate that.
yeah.
I totally get it.
um so yeah, he fixes the timeline, puts the tomato soup or whatever back on the shelf. Um and then we get back to the current timeline. Um the um what is it, the courtroom scene I thought was all right. Again, dialogue was a bit weird there, because like the lawyer's like, now thanks to the latest technology
Yeah,
from
from
Wayne
Bruce Wayne.
Enterprises. It's like, okay. But like the sentiment of the scene I thought was still there. that was nice. And then do we want to just jump to the
Well, I
like?
mean, going really quickly back to the courthouse scene, because at the
Sure.
beginning of the film, his father's appeal is coming up, but
Right.
the video footage of him at the grocery store getting tomatoes shows his head down because the tomatoes are on like the third shelf, so they don't
Yeah.
have his face in the video. And then at the end of the movie, you find out that Barry put all the tomatoes at the top shelf, so he has to look up. Is that
Mm,
Barry learning his lesson or not about messing with time? Because honestly, I felt like that's what he should have done the entire time. I was like, just get him to look up in the surveillance footage. Like that's
right.
that
Yeah.
seems so obvious to me. And then
Well,
he
so
does. Is
I
that what
guess
changes what we're about to
I
talk
was
about?
just gonna say that I guess that is what I don't realize it until now though. So it was like maybe the execution wasn't quite there because it's like a blink and you miss it type thing. But I guess that explains why George Clooney is the Batman,
Yeah, Barry Allen
right?
created Batman and Robin, I guess. I was
Yeah,
this part of the this was so I can't wrap my head around it. I don't know how to explain this to people. I don't
right.
get it.
I would honestly like the almost cynical part of me would just boil it down to being like they just wanted another cameo in the end. It's like I don't know
I
what the
could
reasoning.
the problem with it though is, and this is gonna get super nerdy, but like
I'm here for it.
George Clooney's Batman is supposed to be Michael Keaton's Batman. Like
Right, yeah.
Batman '89 all the way to Batman and
There was
Robin, even though they
never any
switched people.
distinction.
Yeah, they're supposed to be because Alfred's the same Alfred, so that was always supposed to be in like the same franchise.
Yeah.
And so now you have George Clooney coming out of the limousine, replacing Ben Affleck. So that's the Batman of this timeline now. But is it? I don't get it. Is
Yeah.
it the Batman and Robin, or like what is it? I don't.
Yeah.
And then it ends there. It like it just
Yeah. It's
it's such a
such a
weird
weird.
place to end because
Yeah.
it's like, wait, were there plans to bring? Because I cannot believe for a second that the studio's plans were to bring George Clooney back as Batman. Like who? Like we now live in a world where
Hey,
Jamie Foxx is
yeah.
back as Electro and George Clooney is back as Batman. Like what
And
the
I mean
heck?
if they can bring back Michael Keaton, they could probably bring back George Clooney.
I mean, but
So,
people like Michael Keaton's
yeah.
Batman. That's a big difference. And then it
Right.
also goes to like Batgirl was supposed to have Michael Keaton as Batman in it.
Yeah.
Before like we were supposed to find out what like I don't know what they were planning on doing. I don't know what the ending means. I don't know why George Clooney was there, if it was supposed to be serious or just a joke, but even if it's just a
Yeah.
joke, it messes with my head so much.
Yeah. Yeah. The price of comedy is high with that one. It's
Yes.
like so yeah, I don't know, very odd note to end on. So yeah, I would say yeah, that kind of wraps it up for me. I think I touched on everything I wanted to touch on.
It's an up and down movie. This review
Yeah,
was chaotic, but so was the movie.
exactly. Yeah, very fitting, I would say. Honestly, I was kind of expecting um uh the CW Flash to show up at some point. I thought we were going to get that. I thought we were going to go that
Apparently,
hard.
the director had him on the list and decided to not use him, which is
Right.
like, I don't know. I guess he
Yeah.
kind of dodged a bullet being in this movie.
Yeah.
Coming
Yeah,
from someone who likes
probably
the movie.
honestly. It only would have detracted more probably.
Yeah.
Um
Would have made
so
more sense
yeah.
in Nicolas Cage, though.
Yeah, right, yeah. Um, yeah, I don't really know, honestly, kind of being a little more cynical again. If we're going to talk about creator goal a little bit, I feel like their goal was to get this thing across the finish line and get it released. So I don't know whether it makes back its money. Like the budget was reportedly 200 million for this film.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
So, and as of like the Saturday weekend opening, it's at like 25 million so far. So not not super good. But I don't know if that'll match projections or whatever. But yeah, I don't know how this movie's going to do at the box office, especially with all the controversy around Ezra Miller and whatnot.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people had already written off the film because of that alone. So Um, yeah, it's I don't really know what to
It
make of
it's
the goal
just a
with this one.
bizarre movie. It's a
Yeah,
bizarre time, and it's hard to place your finger on it. It's also
yeah,
hard too because um we'll never know what the plan was. Like, I think a big appeal of this movie was Keaton, but also James Gunn announcing the DCU said that we're going to find out in the Flash. It kind of resets everything, and people were kind of looking
mm,
for answers. You don't get answers here. You just get more questions and you get more confusion. And what's worse is because the whole thing is being rebooted, you'll
yeah,
never know what the ending of this movie means or
yeah.
where they
Well,
were going
I
with
mean,
it. Or
unless they actually end up following through on the rumors of a sequel already being written, which like I would be so surprised if a sequel got greenlit, much less like released. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, I don't know. Cynical part of me again is just like there's something in James Gunn's contract that makes him have to promote this film on Twitter and whatnot. I'm like, do you really think it's that good? I don't know, but I'll reserve too much judgment. Hello. We unfortunately had a hiccup with the end of this recording session. The file kind of got corrupted. A bit of recording mishaps, unfortunately. Luckily, you didn't miss out on too much. We were actually just kind of wrapping up, surmising our general thoughts and whether we'd recommend it or not. I kind of landed on the spectrum of not recommending it. I still had a relatively good time with The Flash, but don't think I'd recommend it to anybody. Um, Unless it's like on streaming or something, maybe check it out then. And Zach said he would recommend it. He had a good time with it. It is a bit of a bizarre film, but still enjoyable enough for him to recommend. Yeah, that's kind of really all you missed. Luckily, there was a bit of salvageable footage on Zach's end, so I'm just going to throw it to him so he can do his plugs.
yeah. You can find me at Zach Milne Talks Movies on YouTube, Twitter, pretty much anywhere you guys can type that in. You guys can find me. As far as recommendations go, I mean, since we're talking about time travel movie, they talk about Back to the Future a lot in this movie, which, as a Back to the Future huge fan, I really liked. For time travel movie recommendations, Bill and Ted Excellent Adventure. If you've never seen Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, that's a really fun, quirky comedy from the 80s. About Time is an underrated time travel movie, I think. It's kind of a romantic drama, but yeah, man, it's so good. And yeah, I think those would be two time travel recommendations that I would give you. And Back to the Future, of course. If you've never seen Back to the Future, you got to watch that one.
Thank you, Zach. Those are some great recommendations. I will pile on to that recommendation of About Time, actually. I really like that film. Strong performances from Domhnall Gleeson and Rachel McAdams. Great time travel film, great comfort film overall, really. But yeah, that'll do it for this episode. You can continue to watch and listen to the No Score Review Show wherever you're doing so. I've got reviews coming up for Wes Anderson's new film, Asteroid City. We've got reviews coming for Oppenheimer, Barbie, Mission Impossible, and Indiana Jones have new movies coming out this summer as well. And I'm also actually going to be doing a full franchise in review for both of those as well. Those will be coming very soon. Plan to release those kind of a bit before the new movies comes out, where we just kind of do a deep dive on the franchise as a whole and any highlights and lowlights we have for each individual movie themselves. Yeah, you can also, if you want more superhero multiverse goodness, I did a review on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And actually, speaking of Spider-Man, I also launched a kind of subsection of the show, the No Score re-review show, where we tackle stuff that's already been out, be it video games, movies, or television. So yeah, you can go check that out. There'll be more episodes of that coming very soon. Otherwise, you can find me on all the socials at NoScore or at NoScore Reviews. And if you like video game Let's Play content, I have a channel for that at NoScore Plays, where I do mainly indie games, puzzle game type point and click stuff. So go check that out if you want. Otherwise, thank you all so much for watching and listening. Thank you again to Zach for joining me. A bit of a rocky end to this episode, but I think we stuck the landing overall. And yeah, thanks again, and we'll see you in the next review. Bye bye.